Akash, good Wednesday to you. Can you fill us in on President Trump's True Social post today where he said he wants one big, beautiful bill, not two?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be back with you, Hugh. So this was big news from the president this morning. As folks who watch your show will obviously know because you do such a good job informing them, the Senate and the House Republicans were not really on the same page. Where the Senate was considering a two-track strategy. They were working on a bill that was only energy policy, defense policy, and border security, no taxes. They were going to save taxes until later this year, while the House was moving a package that had all of the above, including extending the Trump tax cuts in there. This morning, the president came out and said that he wants both chambers to move the House budget resolution, which has, again, the tax policy as well as border security and energy policy in it. So that's a major update. The House is out for recess this week. Next week, they'll come back and move that resolution on the House floor, which hopefully does set up their passage of the reconciliation bill later in the year. But a major, major update that makes it seem, at this point at least, like Congress is going to try to focus on the one big, beautiful bill, as the president calls it.
Now, Akash, I read a Fox News story that quoted a California Central Valley Congressman, Dave I can't remember how to say his name. He said, oh, there was too much Medicaid cuts. And I wrote a column saying, you got to hang together or all going to hang separately here. I really don't think there's a debate to be had on the floor. Do you? They just got to vote for this or not vote for this.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think it's really important to separate myth from fact here, Hugh, which is that there's obviously a lot of misleading claims. Anytime any kind of healthcare program or benefit program comes up for debate like this, it is possible to save hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid and any of these programs really without anybody losing their benefits. I think that is kind of an essential component of this. And I think with Medicaid in particular, it's important to focus on the fact that that program was intended for pregnant women, the indigent, the very, very poor. It was never really intended originally to be meant for able-bodied, childless adults. And so if what we're doing is getting Medicaid back to its core focus population, I think that's a good thing. But ultimately, these spending conversations and budget cuts and spending cuts and reforms and things like that, while many of them are good and well-intended, we don't believe they should stand in the way of good tax policy. When it comes to the focus on the tax bill, that's where we think members of Congress should really be casting their vote over, is making sure that they're voting for the most pro-growth tax package that can possibly.
Now, I don't know the details. I know Congressman Valadao was upset about Medicaid cuts, and again, I don't know what they are. Everyone can have a point of view, but they got to move the budget to unlock reconciliation, and then I believe the committees of jurisdiction get to do the particulars. Now, what is the play in the joint for the tax committee, the Ways and Means Committee, because there's apparently a part of the budget resolution that will go to the floor that allows them to cut more taxes if more savings are found.
Yeah, that's right. So right now that number is $4.5 trillion. And again, some of that will be accounted for with dynamic growth as well, Hugh. As we've talked about in the past, the CBO's track record on assessing the growth impact of policy changes has not been very good. It wasn't good for the first round of the tax cuts under President Trump and really previous rounds where revenue exceeded projections, growth exceeded projections. So I think that's some of what's up for debate. If the Ways and Means Committee on the House side can find more savings, they get to pass more tax cuts. And I think that goes for the House in its entirety. The more they can find in savings, the more room it gives them to pass tax cuts, which is important because right now it's going to be very difficult to make those tax cuts permanent. But if they can find more savings, then the resolution gives them the ability to make those tax cuts permanent, which is ultimately the best case scenario for families and for employers in this country.
Does it have to be savings or can they find revenue as well, Akash?
They can find revenue, Hugh, but I think as long as they focus on getting rid of tax expenditures and corporate welfare, that's a great thing. What we don't want to see is new taxes, increased tax rates, things like you might remember the debate over the border adjustment tax last time around. That would have been $1 trillion tax hike on consumers. It would harm American manufacturers who import goods, import inputs from abroad. And so we don't want to see any new taxes.
Akash, can I interrupt you? I want to tax dope. Because every state that I know that legalizes marijuana is making bank on it. The federal government still prohibits its sale and its possession. It doesn't make any sense. Would you object to sin taxes going up?
Well, I think we've got to look at sin taxes carefully, Hugh. We don't think taxes should be levied based on whether people think products are good or bad. Taxes should be applied broadly, fairly across the board. Sin taxes are very uncertain revenue sources, and so if we're trying to raise sustainable revenue, those might not be the way to go. But certainly, there are plenty of places to cut corporate welfare to raise revenue in a way that doesn't harm the American people and American consumers. I will say that we're going to get a little more clarity on this view on Monday. Speaker Johnson is doing an event with AFP live streamed on our platform.
Oh, good. And I got to get Chairman Smith back on, because if there's one guy we want to talk to right now, it's Chairman Smith. He's chairman of Ways and Means, and he's a smart guy, as is Speaker Johnson. Akash, always good to see you. Keep us posted. Keep them focused. We got to get that through the House. Whatever's in it's got to get through the House. Every vote necessary. Nobody gets to stay home. I'll be right back, America.